And there is also a great fear, and a lot of people are talking about that if Maduro does win or is able to successfully steal the election here again, that they will be leaving and there will be another mass migration out. Some polls have said that a third of respondents told them that they are thinking about leaving, as much as another 10% of the population fleeing.
Election station, and this morning polls have opened in an election in Venezuela. This is one of the most tensely awaited presidential elections in more than a decade, with opposition supporters thinking that there is a real chance that they might oust President Nicolas Maduro from office after 11 years. Carrie Kahn is covering events in Venezuela for NPR, National Public Radio of the United States. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, people are talking about the possibility of the opposition winning, of Eduardo Gonzalez winning, yet at the same time, nobody regards Venezuela under Maduro as a proper democracy. So is there a real chance that could happen?
That is the big question, and it's very tense here right now. I think the opposition believes that they have a united front that they haven't had in decades, and that if polls are correct, they would have a sizable electoral victory, whether Maduro would recognize that victory or not and cede power. That is the big question, and just what's going to happen post-electorally has everybody waiting. Today, we're just going to see what the turnout is. Both sides say they can bring out their supporters, and we've seen get out the vote efforts on both sides growing, and again, we just have to see what's going to happen. It's very, very interesting and tense right now.
I mean, when you say tense, what do you mean? Are there troops on the street or police or what's happening?
It's not so much that, it's just like what will be the response from Maduro if the polls are correct and there is going to be a 20-30 point advantage, a landslide defeat of him. He's never had to face that before, so we'll have to see what he does. You don't see a lot of troops on the street. There is a large presence of police, and at voting centers there will be. In the downtown area there was two large campaign closer rallies on Thursday, and I wouldn't say that the police presence was that great, and went off there. There were sizable crowds at both rallies in Caracas here in the capital, but I don't think there was any violence, and there wasn't any large police scuffles or protesters or anything. It seemed pretty peaceful, and I think people are hoping for a peaceful vote today. It's what happens after is the big question.
I mean, it looks like a close election, which is remarkable given that Maria Machado, the main opposition leader, has actually been excluded from standing.
Yes, but she has galvanized the opposition in a way that they haven't been able to come together. It's quite remarkable. She was always seen as an outsider, a hard right on the skirts of the opposition. She wasn't part of of a lot of the movement before. She was always just sidelined. And then when the opposition began to mount this campaign against Maduro and held its own primary under the pressure from outside international forces, including the United States, that gave sanction relief to Venezuela if they would abide by certain efforts to have a free and fair election, which Maduro said he would do. And then Machado was able to come up and really unify. She won this primary that was held by the opposition with 92% of the vote. And then it was after that the highest court here in Venezuela barred her from running in the election. She says they were false charges. So then she had to scramble and look for somebody to move in her stead. And she came up with this 74-year-old, very unknown former diplomat, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, and he said he would stand in her place. And the two of them have been barnstorming across the country to amazing crowds. It's just something that we haven't seen the opposition be able to pull off in more than a decade.
Now, what is at stake in terms of this result if there is a change of president for Venezuela, first of all, but also for the rest of the world, bearing in mind that Maduro has some pretty unsavory allies in the view of the West?
I think there's a lot at stake in the region. The biggest crisis, besides the economic decline here in Venezuela, which has just been stunning, I think the figure is they've lost 70% of GDP over the last 10 years. Just an incredible economic crisis. Venezuela sits on the world's largest oil reserves. It has been unable to tap those oil reserves because of mismanagement and corruption of the state oil company by the Maduro administration. But what more importantly, I think what people are talking about here is the terrible migration crisis. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans have left the country in the last 10 years. And that has become a major issue in this campaign. Maria Corina Machado is vowing to bring them all back. Maduro even had to change his tunes. For years, he vilified these people as traitors to the country for leaving. But every Venezuelan that I have talked to, without exception, it's amazing, has a relative abroad, either in the United States, in Europe, a lot in Spain, and in the neighboring countries here in Latin America. Colombia has taken in the vast majority of the refugees from Venezuela. So I think people are really hoping that there would be some sort of change here. The economic situation would continue to improve, and that many of the Venezuelans could come back. And there is also a great fear, and a lot of people are talking about that if Maduro does win or is able to successfully steal the election here again, that they will be leaving and there will be another mass migration out. Some polls have said that a third of respondents told them that they are thinking about leaving, as much as another 10% of the population fleeing.
Carrie Kahn, an important election. Thank you very much indeed. She is represents NPR in Caracas. Thank you.